Awesome.
great.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. My name is Tess Bickley. I'm a residence life coordinator at Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta. I also serve on the board as the Canadian Membership Director, and I'm really excited to see everybody here today. This is such an awesome group. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Friday as we come into training and move in and all that jazz. So we're really, really thankful for you being here. I have the distinct honor of introducing Bob Lambert, who is a manager at Mount Royal University, who I get to work with every day and absolutely love every day. We are in Calgary, Alberta, and Bob completed his master's at the University of Calgary and actually was a past president for NWACUHO. So Bob, I'll pass it to you, and thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tess. Thanks for having me. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday, August 5th. Calm before the storm, before students move in, at least for us, starting to get things all ready. Like Tess said, my name is Bob Lambert. I'm the manager of resident services at Mount Royal University. I use he, him pronouns. I've been at Mount Royal University for 8 years and served on the Northwest COOL Board of Directors for 5 years as well. And it feels good to kind of be back in the circle a little bit. It's happy to be here. And so today we're gonna chat about what I wish I knew as a new professional. I'm hoping really this can kind of just be a conversation. We got 6 folks on the call, and so let's make it informal. Let's have some discussions and get to know each other a little bit more. And if you're not comfortable and you don't want to talk, then don't, and that's cool too. No stress. You can just also listen to me blab if you want. I can certainly do that. So what else do I want to mention about me? Yeah, been at Mount Royal for a while, 8 years in higher education. In my spare time, I enjoy nature, anything nature, camping, hiking, walking. It's all fun for me. Baseball is up there too, and recently gotten into woodworking, and that's been a fun little pastime when I'm not parenting, when the little one's gone to bed. So happy to chat today. And I found myself in the first few years of my career feeling overwhelmed with the amount of new things that were happening. Many places I stepped felt out of my comfort zone. Once I became a mid-level manager, I started to write down kind of the things that I wish I knew sooner. So this session reviews what those discoveries were, and I'm hoping we can have some discussion. I'm encouraging you to kind of reflect on your experiences as a new professional, and maybe what were some of the things that you wish you knew. Okay, so we're gonna discuss some of the lessons I've learned, or I did learn, identify some shared experience with those in the group. We're gonna support each other because that's what we do. We like doing that, and we're gonna suggest and recommend some professional development opportunities as well. Okay. So to start off, I'm interested in having an understanding of some of the things that you're experiencing as a new professional. I thought it would be a good way for us all to kind of get on the same page, get some ideas out there. It's also can be helpful for us to get some reassurance that we're not maybe the only ones going through something. So I have a link to a Jamboard. For those of you who don't know what a Jamboard is, it's like a shared whiteboard that we can kind of all participate in and write things on. You're not necessarily required to speak about what you wrote unless you'd like to, but I'm going to pop that link in the chat here. I'm also all about the options, and so if folks would rather just jump in and speak instead of contributing on the Jamboard, that works for me as well, but I wanted to give an opportunity for both. So if you use the link that I just put in the chat, it should give you access to the Jamboard. I don't see anyone else on it just yet, but
Hey Bob.
Yeah,
It looks like I only have view only, so you have to ask for editing
interesting.
permissions,
Okay.
or I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that's how you do it, but I was looking for like something where you can start typing like a text box or something, but
Yeah,
huh.
why don't you try and give it another like a refresh? I have it as editor now. And if it's not working, maybe we can just have a quick chat. Oh, I see Tess just jumped in.
It looks like it's working now.
Okay. And again, if this isn't your thing, then feel free to just on mic as well, and you can tell me. So I'm really just trying to get a sense of, how has your experience been as a new professional? What are some challenges and things that have gone well? What are some new learnings? If you go to the left side of the Jamboard, there's an option for you to do a sticky note, and you can type in that way as well, instead of feeling like you need to write or draw. Great. Okay, so I see a roller coaster. Oh my gosh. Yes, it has been, and it can be. I see support has been a little tricky. Absolutely. I can only imagine being a new professional during the pandemic as well. As someone who has hired a new professional during the pandemic, I can definitely, I know that they would be comfortable with me saying that it's hard to kind of feel integrated and involved in right out of the gates as well when folks are kind of working remotely. Okay, we're getting a couple new things. Challenges boosting team morale, for sure. You never know what you're walking into when you're a new professional, and that can be hard to navigate as well. Understanding the structure of the university, that takes time. Especially, I find structures of university has changed quite a bit in the last 2 years in a lot of places as well. I'll give it just another minute here. Any additional thoughts? Change management within teams, for sure. Level of engagement for new projects. It can be hard to connect with other staff in a less formal setting. Lack of confidence a little bit when there are so many unknowns. Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about that. Okay, thanks everyone. Would anyone like to share? You don't have to, no pressure. Feel free to unmic yourself if you'd like to. Okay, so within our industry, navigating the first few years as a residence professional can be challenging. For me, I didn't know where to start. There seemed to be new everywhere, and every staff member has a unique experience. One noteworthy trend that I'll say that I've seen, however, in speaking to staff, is about how to balance all the priorities that is kind of pushed along our way as a new professional. So this session reviews my personal experiences in my first few years as a professional. How I'm choosing to do this is by sharing 10 things I wish I had known. Following this sharing, I will once again invite others to share some of their experiences and challenges they have undergone. I'm also going to answer this question, but you got to stick around till the end for me to give you that answer. I wanted to say one kind of caveat. This is my experience. I'm not necessarily giving advice per se, but I just want to say that, and I can't speak for everyone. Some of these tips are a little bit more profound, a little bit more in depth than others. And some of the things that affected me may not have affected you. And so I'm not trying to do a catch-all here. And so something doesn't apply to you and you can't connect with, that's okay, no stress. And as I've said a couple times, if you do have any comments on specific things that I've brought up, feel free to chime in, and I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so number one, you can't do it all, Bob. You know, again, these do get a little bit more profound than this first one, don't worry. But I found in residence life, there seems to be a million different things that required my attention, and a wide range of skills that, you know, kind of going into a role I just all of a sudden needed to possess. You know, was I good at programming? Was I good at conduct, legacy building programming, LLCs, learning communities, team building, budget, on call? Should I be good at all of those? For me, I wondered how I could be proficient kind of just in my first year at all of these things. I had no idea. I had new ideas of how I wanted to revamp our conduct system. I also wanted to create a curricular design or a programming. Could I do both? And I learned over the years that absolutely not. I can't do it all. And nor should I necessarily even try to do it all in 1 year. So I would encourage you to think about the areas that you enjoy. I don't think you should solely focus on you know, one thing, but I also know that it's so much better for you to be able to do one thing really, really great than have 30 projects on the go that never seem to move forward. And that was something I was guilty of in my first year. I love the idea of being a master of all things, but that's just not possible. However, you can be certainly good at one or two things, and, you know, have one thing, one project that kind of evolves as you go along. And it all sounds great, doesn't it? You know, we go into these new roles and it's like, oh, I want to do it all. I want my hands kind of in everything. And you don't need to be. All right, so number two, everyone is going to have a different style, and that's okay. You're going to work with a boatload of people in your career. This is extremely exciting because very few of them are going to be working the exact same way that you do. And you're going to be floored by some people and their approach. They will shock you with how amazing they are. They'll use skills that you haven't mastered. And that's really awesome to work with so many different people. If I could tell myself something in the early days, it would be to really pay attention to these people who are doing things different than me and learn from them, and tell them how good they are, and tell them, you know, what you're learning from them. And I think that I think about the leader I am, and I can think of so many people who have helped me become who I am today. And we don't just become leaders on our own. It's from, you know, really fantastic people. And I guess one thing I'll say is it's the exact same goes for people who you may disagree with their style, right? Because that comes up too. And so make note of all of these things that you recognize. You know, if they're in a position that you hope to be in one day and you maybe disagree with the decision they've made, you will learn a ton by when you take a step back and learn from them rather than necessarily being annoyed with them. I'll give an example. So when I moved into my role, the manager at the time, Mark Keller, he's now the director. And so when he was the manager of residence life, you know, he managed the team differently than I did. When I first moved in, I was like, okay, there's lots of things that Mark did that I loved and I learned from. There's also things that he did that are certainly different than how I manage things. And that's cool. And that's okay. Even though you may, you know, lead differently, you can, like I said, take a step back and learn from these people as well. Okay, number three, good decisions take some time. This is one that I still haven't quite mastered. If you really knew me, you would know that I love efficiency. And it would have been good for Bob to be reminded of this as a new professional. I've learned that when I slow down, when I take the time to read an email twice before I send it, double check that I've spelled everyone's names right, it makes such a huge difference. So my advice would be take 10 minutes before every meeting, really think about what's going to be discussed. If you have 10 minutes before a meeting, that doesn't always happen, but really think about what's going to be discussed in a meeting, write a sentence or two down and be prepared with what you'd like to say. For me, this has come a really, it's helped me tremendously. I found that even when I'm going into like difficult conversations with parents, I like to kind of have a game plan. So take time, slow things down a little bit, build relationships, build some context around a conversation. Sometimes you need to set ground rules. I just set ground rules with a parent about a month ago. And yes, setting ground rules with a parent, they wouldn't have called it that, but that's exactly what I had to do. And so, when, like I said, it takes some time, slow down. Good decisions are going to take a little bit of time, and that's okay. Okay. Number 4, so don't expect of others what you expect of yourself. Take a second for this one. It was definitely a turning point in the early days of my career. And this one was hard for me. In this context, I'm thinking specifically about student staff. Likely you're in the position you are is because you're operate in a certain way when you're a student staff member. You were probably extremely efficient. You were incredibly competent, hardworking. You probably had high expectations for yourself. And you won't always find this with your RAs. You won't always supervise people who have the exact same expectations of themselves as you do for yourself. And so that's okay, right? There's always going to be people who maybe don't do as much as you, and may approach their job a little bit different than you and prioritize things a little bit different as well. And the opposite might be true as well. You may be the one that cares a little bit less about something. And so it's good for us to take a step back and remember that we are our own people and we care about things our own way. And so when we have expectations of ourselves, that's wonderful, but knowing that we can't always expect of others what we expect of ourselves. And as a great little segue into number 5, I found that expectations really are everything when it comes to building relationships with others and working together as a team. We all have expectations. You have expectations of this presentation right now, and I hope I'm meeting them, right? But that's just life. And if expectations don't align, that can be a problem. And so similar to setting ground rules, something that I've intentionally started to do more and more in my role is to set those expectations and just try to get on the same page with folks, right? I've learned to ask people, what are you hoping to get out of this? Or I have done the same, is sharing kind of like what I'm hoping to get out of an experience or out of a meeting. And it's been incredible to see how people, taking the time helps the relationship or the conversation go more smoothly. It helps solve some conflict within my team. And it's wild to see how, simple things can be fixed by just setting those expectations with folks. Usually when I'm dealing with conflict, I say to myself or ask the people around me, what's reasonable? Tess has heard me say this a million times, but what is it reasonable for you to, especially with roommate conflict, right? Is it reasonable for you to do the dishes right after you cook a meal? Maybe not, right? You want to maybe go eat and do dishes after. How about within 10 hours of cooking a meal? Probably, you should be doing dishes then. And so I really frame conversations around, what are the expectations here and how can we get on the same page so needs are being met. Got the bonus one. Okay, number 6, evidence-based versus values-based decision-making. So we're about halfway through here. This is one of my favorites. I do a lot of thinking about decision-making and how do you make the right one? How do you know, what the right decision is? And this sometimes stumps me as a new professional. We hear a lot about evidence-based decision-making, but is this always the right way to go? My theory is that tough decisions should both be evidence-based and values-based. One without the other may not always ensure that we're making the right one. As an example, kind of a silly, simple example is, I can guarantee success in programming, right? I can promise you that I can get almost the entire community out if I have drinking games, pizza, beer, that's evidence shows me that this will work, right? And I know that not always, but as a silly example, so play with me here a little bit. I can get everyone out to my community if I'm kind of doing some of these things, but that doesn't align with my values, right? That doesn't align with the institution's values. That doesn't align with what we're hoping for our community. And so, although maybe something would be successful, it doesn't always align with the values of the institution. So I encourage you to think about, what's the evidence showing me here? What are trends? And how do the decision I make, is it both rooted in the evidence that I have and also the values of our program? And I found that when I'm able to make decisions that align with both of these, I'm usually very proud of what I decide. Okay, number 7, the more you supervise, the better you get at it. This one's pretty straightforward, or is it? I've learned that the quantity of people you supervise really does help you in terms of being able to supervise others. So how do you manage this as a new professional, though, right? If you haven't had the opportunity to supervise a lot of people, then how can you just be expected to be incredible at supervision? It's like, well, we don't expect that, right? As manager, I don't expect my new professional just to all of a sudden get every aspect of supervision. So if I was a new professional now, I would tell myself to relax. I would tell myself to accept that, I'm still learning, that it shouldn't be expected of me that I just understand things right away when it comes to supervision. I wished, but also thought at different times that I should be able to handle all of my RAs. I was good at this, right? And absolutely you are, but I found over the years that, the more people you do supervise, the better you do get at it. And so I hope that in this kind of, in this tip that I've added, that it allows you to give yourself some grace and ease your brain a little bit. If you didn't nail a tough conversation, that's okay. You'll get it next time. You don't know how to approach a conflict within a team, that's okay. Ask your senior RLC, maybe they have some ideas, or ask your manager, they'll be able to help you work through it. There's nothing wrong with being the new professional. There's nothing wrong with being in your first year in a role and not knowing exactly how to manage something. I had a professor when I was doing my master's of education that told me that it's important for us to stay in the inquiry. And she meant by that to ask lots of questions and have kind of that learner mindset. And I found that to be incredibly helpful as I was navigating my first few years, is how can I just approach things from a place of learning and knowing that, not every conversation is going to be flawless. And anyways, so there's number 7. All right. Number 8, imposter syndrome doesn't really go away for you, Bob. Gosh, I wish it would have. Of course, I've gained some confidence and abilities that have helped me be able to adapt a little bit more effectively. But I have days where I just don't feel worthy or good at my job. It happens. I've spoken to a lot of seasoned professionals who feel the same way. It's we're doing our best, but we certainly have moments of self-doubt. And of course, that may not show up for all of you either, but this was certainly my experience. As an example, last year when I was, I guess almost 2 years ago, when I was running the NWACUHO conference online, I still had reminders posted on my desktop of like, breathe, Bob, you got this, you're going to be okay, this. Right. And so I think that we often think that the people that are in these big positions, just have it. They figured it out. Things are easy. And it's like, maybe for some of them, but for a lot of people, Bob, at least for me, no, like there's days where I struggle as well. And so it's, especially as a new professional, if you're feeling nervous, if you're feeling overwhelmed sometimes, like that can be part of it. And that, I think that's part of caring, and that means you want to do a really good job, and that's admirable. That's wonderful. And well, for me, imposter syndrome hasn't gone away yet, and so it creeps in there sometimes still. Okay, number 9. You get really good at what you practice. So practice things right. Ask for feedback. Document everything. That would be something I would say, something I wish I knew as a new professional. I was contemplating adding this, but don't talk smack about other new professionals. That is something I've seen and I've witnessed quite a bit. I've had someone come up to me and talk smack about an employee when I was an RLC, and interesting enough, when I became the manager, they had applied for a job that I was hiring for. I was like, well, you didn't talk nice about others, and that's not cool. And so, kind of going back to one of the lessons I had earlier was around, or I lost my train of thought there, but we're all learning and we're all getting better. And so if you disagree and if you feel like someone has a different style, don't necessarily need to voice how much you disagree with them, right? You can make a mental note for yourself and say that you'll do things differently for you, but we shouldn't be spreading bad gossip about other new professionals who are just working through their job too, just like we are. If you want to spread gossip, spread good gossip. Tell people how great they are. Tell others how great other people are. That always works out really well. And I found, kind of as a general mantra, something that I found to work really well for me over the years was kind of the saying, like, always us, never me. And what I mean by that, I remember running a in-service for my team in my first year, and we have a great professional that works at Mount Royal University. Her name is Alina Bocek, and she's manager of residence experience now, and she was my co-residence life coordinator when I first started. And I was eager and excited to run this in service for my team, and I forgot to print all of the worksheets for just a simple mistake. It happens. But when we got to the point where we were about to do the worksheets, Alina realized that it was my responsibility. I was supposed to do the printing, but she realized that I didn't print the worksheet. And instead of saying like, oh, Bob forgot to print this, it was the smallest little thing, but she said, oh, gosh darn, we forgot to print this. And it was we. It was never Bob, right? It was always, we were a team. This was a part of something that we needed to do in order to be ready for the in-service. I didn't do it, but Alina never pointed fingers, never put guilt on me. And I found that was the smallest, but one of the most, like, it always stuck with me how lovely that was. And so I try to do that as well in my work now. Is, it's us, we're one big team, and we're going to forget things at times. And it's not helpful to point out who forgot to do the printing. That's not helpful, but we forgot printing. And so we're going to take care of it. And so clearly that example, it wasn't a big thing. We just went and printed it and all worked out. But it really stuck with me how she chose to lead in that situation. And so you get really good at practicing when you practice. You get really good at things when you practice the right things. And so that's what I encourage you to do. And don't cut those corners early on. All right. Last one. Consistency is key. Maybe the best for last. Consistency matters and helps create a reputation for you. So right now, I'd like you to think about one of the best leaders someone you look up to. This could be someone within work. It could be a friend, a partner, a mentor, etc. Why do you look up to them? I'm willing to bet, I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that it is not because of one thing that they've done, right? When we think of the best leaders in our life, it is not because of one action or one thing that they have done that has made them a great leader. It is because of all of the little things, all of the things they do every single day. They didn't open a door for someone just once. They open the door for people every day. They greet people every day. They say hello. They check in with you. You're going to be remembered for the things you do, and that consistency and being that person consistently is key. I think help creates our reputation and helps create who we are as people. Okay, so started this webinar off with this question. Let's go back to it. I'm hoping maybe I can get some thoughts from those on the call. Where do we even start as new professionals? What do you think how do we decide what we should focus on? Do people have any thoughts?
Hey Bob, this is Matthew. Sorry, I was a bit late. I was working on something else and lost track of the time, but I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but just being present in the space that you're in, meeting with somebody, the work that you're kind of trying to do, like trying to just, be present in that, I think can go a long way just because we're all thinking about 30 things at once, but just thinking about, okay, I'm going to be present with this process or I need to be present with this person. I think it's just something that's really just beneficial over the long term for somebody that's new. And some people might have kind of struggle with that. And so what does that mean to be present? Like, what is that? If you're struggling to do that, like what tools can you kind of work on? So anyways, just a thought there.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Absolutely.
Yeah, kind of I like that you said that right away, Matthew, because I was kind of feeling that, but I didn't have the word present yet. But one thing that I've really learned is, and I'm trying to figure out how to say it best, but just the act of listening. The act of listening and maybe trying to tease apart what might be something that you want to do for maybe your own reasons, and what if you stop and listen and be present, like you're saying, Matthew, what you're actually hearing and where value could truly be added. And it may be something that's not exactly the same as what you wanted initially.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to setting those expectations with your supervisor too, right? And if you have an idea of something that you want to work on, how can you get into alignment with maybe what the institution wants? And I think that's a really great way to start as a new professional is, what are you interested in and what's your supervisor interested in? And listening to them, like you said, Vanessa, and kind of getting on the same page and getting in alignment with those expectations. There's a really fantastic book by an author named Liz Wiseman, and it's called Impact Player, and it's a term that she uses, and she encourages folks to be impact players within their teams, and meaning that you're working well with one another, and you're having an impact on your different areas by or in your roles by empowering and supporting others in their projects as well, like that. So I haven't read the book. I saw a interview. It was a podcast, and I really enjoyed listening to her speak around it.
I think sorry, I was just going to add one thing on a sort of on a practical level is after you've listened and aligned, maybe looking at, because I know we have such different things happening in a calendar year. So you're looking at sort of these cycles that go on within the housing profession, and getting the lay of the land, if you will, and then provide sort of designing high level what your projects are going to be, what's short term, what's longer term. So that's more practical thoughts.
Yeah. Do folks on the call, is there anything that I certainly missed lots of things, lots of lessons that folks have had? Is there anything that has stood out for you? do you wish that you knew early on in your role? I think this helps us as supervisors be better supervisors too, when we know what some of the things are that new professionals wish they knew.
And leave space for anybody else to jump in, but something like early on that I noticed about myself as a supervisor and employee is the tendency to like respond emotionally, and how do you kind of recognize that and not control it, but just make it productive. And I realized for me that when I thought about building every communication and relationship based on trust, that helped me like pull away from that emotional response to things. If there's, and communicating that to the person I'm working with or the people I supervise, that's what we want to do every time we have an interaction, every time we do something, is to build that trust bank. My chancellor likes to use that analogy. And so it's interesting, because once I stepped away from, that the building trust versus like, an emotional response, it was just a lot easier to work through challenging things, or having difficult conversations or crucial conversations. And so I've noticed that a lot with new employees, that they haven't worked out any skills to kind of, and I don't want people to repress their emotions. Like, they need to speak freely. That is part about building trust, is saying, right now I'm feeling very angry. I'm feeling very, I have a 4 and 7-year-old, and I have a lot of conversations about, talk about how you feel. And so, so I just think that's, not everybody comes with that skill set and how to deal with their emotions in a productive way.
I like that, Matthew. That stands out for me. We should do a 2.0 and have that in there, because it's a really good reminder that, so I think sometimes we can be surprised by a decision that's made, right? And I think that's part of life. We, decisions made, we're like, oh, didn't see that coming, and we find ourselves reacting, or we find ourselves having some of those emotions like you mentioned, Matthew. And I found that, isn't it so helpful when I love having conversations around like someone disagreeing with a decision that's made, 2 hours, 3 hours the next day after that conversation is had, because I know that they've taken some time to reflect, think about the decision that's being made, why they may still disagree with it, but not have that quick reaction right away and, say that's ridiculous, or just respond with kind of their emotions right out of the gates. Like, it's so helpful to kind of have that time for that, little bit of introspection and reflection on it. And then if there's still some feelings, having that conversation after. But yeah, your point around trust too is so good, right? There's all of us in our role, we're doing our best, and sometimes we make our decisions, and it's always, I love when I hear from professionals, like, I know that you're making the best decision you think is best for the situation, or, I trust you. I know that you're doing all that you can. And any other thoughts? This is kind of my last slide here. I got a thank you one here, but is there, folks have any kind of other things they wish they knew as a new professional? Or
I have one thing I could add. Like Matthew, I'm like, I don't want to talk too much. I'm a very chatty person. And this is interesting because I'm actually not in a leadership role, and I would like to be, but there are some things that are holding me back a little bit. And so I've spent a great deal of time just looking for ways to lead, just lead in my role, even though I don't actually supervise anyone, but just to lead by what I'm doing. But there's a lot of fear for me because there's more risk. You're not as protected in terms of, if you do make a mistake, or this is my perception from being in a unionized environment, like not like in a QP union. So when you get into more of an administrative role, there's potential for, I don't know, losing your job if you make really bad decisions, something like that. So for me, this is more listening and hearing what you guys have to offer. But one thing I just wanted to add to that I've observed or seen, and I'm sure we've all experienced this with COVID, is people being in kind of survival mode. And when they're in survival mode, I think because of the world around them, they're bringing that potentially into their job. And a la Brené Brown, I don't know if you guys have listened to Dare to Lead podcast. It's a really good one, but she talks a lot about the scarcity mindset and how when you're leading from that place, or really when you're interacting with anyone in your roles from that place of scarcity, you're holding things super close, you're defensive, you tend to be less collaborative, decision making that blindsides you might immediately elicit threatening kind of feelings from you, threatening for your job security or whatever it might be. And she talks a lot about what you were just saying, Bob, too, in your master's, where you learned, I can't remember the word you used, but the inquiry state, like staying curious and learning. And I think there's ways, and I hope, to continue to connect with myself in terms of like staying curious and maybe observing if something elicits a negative response in you, but like, can you just stay in that place of observing without going to react and sharing that, that negativity, that defensiveness, because it is contagious too within a team. So I don't know, those are just some of my thoughts.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I think an example of a high trust team or anything is somebody being able to speak honestly. It's just working out those skill sets and that what's an appropriate environment, what's appropriate setting, and then like how do you preface it where you can talk about what you're feeling, which can be perceived as negative. I went through a time period in my institution where it became very like we call it toxic positivity, like the negativity, anything negative was perceived as negative versus it being just like honest communication and things that are building kind of trust and where people are at. So I've kind of enjoyed playing with that over the years of like, well, how can you have honest conversations that are going to include some maybe negative or not fully thought out ideas or, biases or, not fully thought out, it's not really what you mean. It's just, it's kind of whatever is coming off the top of your head. So how do you create an environment where those can happen, but in a way that it's going to be a productive conversation? It's not going to be, I don't like to call it positive, like in the end, but just how are we going to be able to recognize where you are and how we can grow and how we can address that. And then also, because we don't want to stay there and recognizing we don't want to stay in this place of frustration. And how do we get to a place of that we're happy, not necessarily happy, I don't like that word either, but just satisfied or content or whatever with the wherever we're at or the process or the decision. And so it's been a fun game over the years to explore that because there's a lot of different opinions out there, but I'm always really interested to learn what others kind of feel about managing the negativity, because you really have to if you're going to be productive, because it won't just go away on its own.
So I'm curious, Matthew, when you're saying you're like playing with that, like in a meeting environment, how would you, like you're something problematic or a pain point that needs to be discussed comes up for you and you're thinking, I'm going to say something about this. And is it like an energy you can feel or like a tone changes in the meeting, or like, how can you tell when you're like, okay, maybe I said that in a way that really like people didn't receive in the constructive way I wanted it to, like, you know what I mean?
Right. So I kind of have identified myself that I'm able to have more tough conversations without it becoming negative or creating emotions. So I actually advocate for a lot of people. If I notice them getting really quiet or I notice them not talking or I notice them kind of say something and then pull back into their shell. Like obviously reading the room and who's in the room and kind of like playing the politics of that room of is it appropriate to kind of strike up that conversation right then in a to tease out and kind of like work out that solution, or is it appropriate to address it, you know, afterwards in a more, you know, controlled setting? And so I just finished a big cycle of staff governance and representing all the staff to the Board of Regents in Alaska and to the president and the chancellors. And so I got really, really good at having these conversations, or I mean, I have more to grow, but I got used to it, I guess. And so it's a skill set that I think that if somebody challenges themselves and it doesn't like compromise their own emotions and what they're feeling, and constantly thinks about how am I going to get this message across and communicate in a way that's going to be productive, then that's kind of the mindset that I don't know if I answer your question or not, but for me, I never found like a book or anything. I think part of it's my personality, part of it's like how I go through life, and then just my experiences.
Yeah. And I think like you're saying, it's kind of, or what I heard you say was that, you know, there's so much nuance in all of these situations, and potentially, you know, you kind of really do have to be present in the moment with that situation and sort of feel, okay, I think this is better, that maybe I can follow up afterwards. It's not really the best avenue right now with other people around, or yeah, no, I think you did answer it. And I think it does come down to like you're saying, like even if there's someone you don't work with a lot, you're still building relationship with them in a small way. And if you're able to kind of pepper trust into, you know, even the fleeting kind of conversations that you have with others, then I think there's less defensiveness potentially, and the ability to talk through some of these things.
I think you make a great point there, Vanessa, when you said like kind of pepper the trust in, like that's, you know, what I was kind of meaning by the consistency point. Like I think that we can really build our reputations by building a little bit of trust here, a little bit of trust there. You know, Tess will absolutely vouch for the fact that I don't always say things as perfectly as I want them to, or as easy as they go, and I say them in my head. And so sometimes you just have to say, I don't think I said that right. Let me try again, right? And like that's fine. It happens, right? And I think as the faster I got rid of my ego and all of it, or feeling like I needed to be perfect, I found myself, I think, building better relationships with my staff. It wasn't like I need to have all the answers. I don't. we can figure them out together sometimes, right? And as soon as I got rid of the idea that I needed to be the all-knowing and the all-perfect, because that's not going to happen. And like, Tess is brilliant. My whole team is brilliant. Why would I think that I know what, you know? And so like, let's bring everyone together. And so I you know, to your point of like the pressure of you making a decision and then being fired, like I've never really felt that. I think that like I have, you know, a team that where it's important to me that we're brainstorming and coming up with a decision that we're all comfortable with. And yes, sometimes there's you know, the ever looming boss hat that has to come on where you have to make a decision. But you still have that support, and it's not as, I think, daunting and intimidating as it sometimes can feel.
Well, and I think that actually speaks a lot probably about the culture that you're a part of and create as well. Do you think?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think I've had a fantastic role model who leads the department, Mark, and you'll never meet someone, well, maybe you will. I find that he's very he's just always looking for ways to have people contribute, and have voices heard. And I think that that's so important, is like, we said sometimes, like, everyone has a voice, not everyone has a vote, but all of the time we are always going to feel like our voices are heard. And even if a decision isn't made the exact way we would think that it should be, we know that our voice was taken into account and considered. And at the end of the day, you can't work for someone much better than that, where that what's being said is not just being, in one ear and out the other. There's some consideration there. And so we're lucky to be led by a great one that's role modeled, kind of the culture that, is that he wants here. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have to say, yeah, in my institution, it's similar, or in my team, it's similar, and there's a freedom, and that, well, it's trust. You trust that you can say hard things, or you can bring your emotions into something. Potentially you can say things imperfectly, you can apologize. Yeah. And you have that you're all looking for ways to add value and to support one another, rather than advocate just for yourself or something. So
I mean, especially in residence, I think too, there's so many like functional areas. There's so much going on, and to supervise an IT coordinator when you know very little about IT, like, let them flourish in their roles. Like, they're the experts, right? And you can supervise them and still not know all of the acronyms they use. You know what I mean? Like, that's okay. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to just letting folks flourish in their roles and giving them and trusting them that they know what they're doing. I'll transition my screen over, just a big old thank you to everyone. This is my Twitter handle at the bottom. Feel free to give me a follow if you don't, or you're not getting much out of following me, but you could if you wanted, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, thanks for NWACUHO for inviting me to present, and I did this at the conference as well.
I have to say, it was so useful.
Good. I'm glad.
That one about, can I just go off a little bit? But the one about expectations, I think I was struggling to articulate that for myself, like where that frustration is coming for, but it's like a frustration within myself, and I didn't quite know. I knew it had to do with expectations, but anyway, thanks.
Yeah, between my therapist and just working through it, I think with lots of people in my life, setting boundaries and those getting on the same page is just, you cannot spend enough time really getting on the same page with the people you work with and the people in your life, and your parents or siblings, and everyone in between, and it goes a long way. That's for sure.
Well, thanks everybody for coming, and thank you, Bob, for presenting. That was really awesome. And I think like we had some really great discussion here. Like, thank you everybody for participating and being here. We are going to be having another webinar coming up in September. So if you're interested, please keep an eye out for that link. The other thing too is that we are inviting folks to present. If you're interested in presenting or have a colleague who you think would be awesome, definitely recommend it. And if you want, I'll put my email in the chat. And feel free to reach out to me directly, or honestly, anybody on the board is great too. And we will get back to you if you're interested. We are changing up First Friday webinars a little bit. So it's going to be First Fridays with NWACUHO. So it's not exclusively webinars anymore, but there's definitely going to be webinars in the mix. So keep an eye out for all the fun stuff happening.
So that's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And good luck with moving and training and all that jazz, and have an awesome weekend, everybody.